Hello, I'm Ed, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, The Ozarks Then and Now. This is episode 4 of Murder and Mayhem in the Ozarks. It is the story of Lillian Ella Barham. Ella was raped, killed, and dismembered Thursday, November 21st, 1912. This is not an original story. It has been written about, recorded, and spread through the newspapers for more than a century now. Most of the information I'm about to share comes from the work of Nita Gould and podcasts of interviews with Mrs. Gould. I am grateful for the work that she has done to save the history of this grisly tale. Thursday, November 21st, 1912, Sheriff James Helm of Boone County, Arkansas, certainly had a handful. The pretty and popular, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and flirtatious 18-year-old Lillian Ella Ethel Barham, pictured Ella here to show her with dark hair, but closer inspection revealed that she wore dark hats. Notice the edges of the hat has much lighter hair. She had been murdered, raped by more than one man, and dismembered, a particularly gruesome crime for that time and place. It was an innocent enough beginning of a day. Ella had walked to the general store in Pledge, Arkansas, from her home near Crooked Creek. She went to buy some material for a hat she wished to make. After shopping, she went home with her purchases. She saddled her brother's horse, Nellie, and rode on to a friend's house to gain assistance in making the new hat. She would have passed the home of a family named Davidson along the way. Likely greetings were exchanged in passing. She would have ridden along the edge of the ravine on the west side of the cemetery shown here. It was this very ravine that her body was discovered. The community banded together to begin looking for her. They went everywhere. They went through the woods. They went up and down the road. They checked the creek. They called out for her. Of course, she never answered. Some of the family camped out on the creek bank. Ella's mother, according to Ms. Gould, and one or two of her sisters stayed on the creek bank, and other people continued searching. So her family and other people were waiting for the search parties to come back and tell them what they had found. It was really cold, and it was getting late. About 9 o'clock, when Ella's brother, Peel, was searching with some other men around the creek, they started to go down into the hollow below the ravine. Suddenly, some boys ran to them. They had been on the other side of the creek, and they appeared terrified, having found Ella's grossly dismembered body. So of course, the men rode to the area right away, and I'm sure they were horrified by what they saw, because the body had been cut into 5 pieces and scattered in 4 different places over a space of about 20 feet. Her clothing was just thrown haphazardly on the ground. Ella Barham had been decapitated, her torso severed in 2, and both legs cut off. Her clothing was scattered about carelessly in the area. Shortly, a messenger was sent to notify the sheriff of Boone County, James Helms. Early Friday morning, Sheriff Helms swore in extra deputies and stationed posses along the roads. He ordered his men to watch the roads near Pleasant Ridge and to arrest any suspicious person. Bloodhounds failed to pick up the scent. The house that Ella had passed earlier was the home of the Monroe Davidson family. Monroe had 2 sons, Otis, age 29, and Lair, age 19. The boys were well known in the area as being kind of wild chasers of women. Both boys will be implicated in this macabre crime. It was later concluded that the boys were home at the time Ella passed by on her way to her friend's house. One of the searchers, J. H. Stewart, was the first to find some of the evidence. He was walking along the west side of the cemetery that Ella had ridden by earlier. He found some blood drops in the road there. He followed them and was led to a fallen tree top. When he uncovered some of the leaves and sticks, he found a massive amount of blood. Other men that were nearby found some rocks that had blood on them. One of the rocks had blonde hair stuck to it. These rocks were later used as evidence in the trial. They found Ella's shoes and stockings, and a decorative comb that women wore in their hair at the time. It was broken in 2. The doctor that did the autopsy formed the opinion that first she was raped, possibly by more than 1 man, and possibly by as many as 3 men. She was struck on the head to cover the rape fact, and then dismembered with a sharp-edged tool to make it easier to move the body and hide it. The coroner had determined that Ella had been dismembered with a sharp-edged tool. The cause of her death was a massive blow to the head. Nearly every bone in her skull was crushed. Despite the fact that no hard evidence was found, or for that matter no eyewitnesses, the jurors suspected that Otis Davidson was guilty, possibly from influence of George Barham, Ella's father, a man of means in the area. Ultimately, a warrant was issued for Otis's arrest. He and his brother Lair were both arrested, Lair being charged with accessory before the fact. Lair was never tried, and he died in the late 60s in Oklahoma. Meanwhile, hundreds of people swarmed the Pleasant Ridge community, and newspaper reporters quickly spread the story. Despite the lack of control over the crime scene, evidence mounted. Blood was found in and under a fallen tree where it was believed Barham had been killed. An axe at the Davidsons' woodpile showed traces of blood. The chain of custody of evidence was non-existent. The crime scene was not protected, and people had already moved Ella's body. Threats of mob violence was raging, and the poor condition of the Harrison jail concerned Sheriff Helms, so the two Davidson brothers were secretly moved to nearby Berryville, Arkansas jail again for their safety. The coroner's inquest, which had not been officially completed, was taken up again on Tuesday, November 26, 1912, this time in Zinc, Arkansas, under the authority of Zinc's Justice of the Peace, Andrew Smith. He served as the new coroner. Jurors were replaced due to their relationship to the Davidsons. After a swift burial, for a further shock to the family, it was necessary to disinter Barham's body to complete the autopsy. In the Zinc schoolhouse, which was used as a makeshift courtroom, 30 people were called as witnesses. At least 20 testified. Otis Davidson was made to press his feet into flour sprinkled on the floor so that the size of his feet could be measured against the footprints that were found at the creek. Although the footprints at the creek were larger, the demonstration proved damaging to Davidson, as some thought the prints at their creek were made larger because of the weight that the man carried, Barham's body, as he crossed the creek. At the time of this saga, the area around Pleasant Ridge held many pie suppers, dinners on the ground, dances, church socials. Much attention was given to the social lives of the rural residents, as in many areas like this. Ella had attended one such event and refused Otis's invitation to dance with him. He also offered to walk her home, again a rebuff. Davidson did not handle the rejection well. He, according to several witnesses, swore he would get even with Barham for rejecting his advances, and he had threatened to rape her. The grand jury received their instructions. Therefore, the grand jury investigated the Davidson's case, and on January 15, 1913, just 2 months and 2 days after the murder, returned one indictment that jointly charged the brothers with first-degree murder and an additional charge to Lair for being an accessory before the fact. 7 days later, Otis Davidson's jury trial began. Monday, January 20th, 1913, saw spectators filling the courtroom. The trial room overflowed into the hallways and spilled onto the courthouse lawn. Jury selection spanned 2 days, and 207 men were examined before the jury was complete. More than 35 witnesses testified. Members of Davidson's immediate family testified that he was at home around the time it was thought Barham was killed. He did not testify on his own behalf, and he remained stoic throughout the trial. On Saturday, January 25, 1913, after the jurors retired to deliberate, Otis Davidson's attorneys, fearing mob violence, again agreed with Judge Reed to have him moved to Berryville again. When the jury returned a verdict of murder in the first degree, Otis was not in the courtroom. Due to the late hour, Judge Reed deferred the remaining proceedings until February 3rd, when he sentenced Otis Davidson to hang in Harrison on March 21, 1913. Larry Davidson's trial was postponed until the July term of the Circuit Court, and he was never tried. It was appealed to the Arkansas Supreme Court. On the grounds cited was that Davidson's state and U.S. constitutional rights had been violated because he was not in the courtroom when the jury rendered its verdict. Thus, he had been denied due process of law. The appeal postponed his execution, and despite his lawyer's efforts, on June 9, 1913, the Arkansas Supreme Court affirmed the verdict of the Boone County Circuit Court. Governor Marion Futrell sentenced Otis Davidson to hang in Harrison on August 11, 1913. Thank you for watching this far, but now a word of what is to come. After the epilogue that gives the final result of justice to Otis Davidson, I would like for you to remain with me for a preview of Murder and Mayhem in the Ozarks, Episode 5, coming soon. I think you will find it interesting, to say the least. Please subscribe by the button in the lower right corner, but most of all, please share this with your friends on social media. The channel is growing, but more people may enjoy our informative and sometimes macabre content. Thank you. Governor Marion Futrell sentenced Otis Davidson to hang in Harrison on August 11, 1913. This was Governor Marion Futrell sentenced Otis Davidson to hang in Harrison on August 11, 1913. Otis was condemned and swiftly executed in Harrison on August 11, 1913, 1 year and 7 months after the gruesome crime. He was executed in front of a crowd that reportedly numbered in the thousands. Otis Davidson was hanged inside an enclosed scaffold. Immediately before his death, he declared his innocence to the crowd below and told them that he hoped the identity of the real killer would one day be known. Most people in the area familiar with Otis felt he was guilty, having been accused of inappropriate behavior with young women in the past, including physical attacks. Epilogue. I traveled to Pleasant Ridge, Arkansas. Now the area is called Harmon, Arkansas. I wanted to see the Crooked Creek area, the grave, and the marker of Ella. Next I went back through Harrison to the Maplewood Cemetery where the ashes of Otis are interred. It was somewhat a moving experience in relation to the research I had done. Otis Davidson was the last man to be legally hanged in Boone County before the state changed its method of capital punishment to electrocution. He is buried in Harrison's Maplewood Cemetery. His curious inscription reads, "Here rests the ashes of Otis Davidson, born January 22, 1883. His life taken August 11, 1913, by misrepresentations born of excitement." Monroe Davidson, his wife, and many of their children, including Lair, moved to Tahlequah, Oklahoma in the summer of 1913, heeding a warning given by a group of armed and some say masked men on horseback who had visited the Davidsons' Pleasant Ridge home in the middle of the night and threatened to destroy their home if the family did not leave the country. Ella Barham's family remained in Boone County, where relatives are still. As promised, a preview of what is to come in Episode 5 of Murder, Mayhem in the Ozarks. It's an obituary. February 2nd, 1976. Gladys Ruth Rogers of Harrison, Arkansas, passed away at the age of 60. Over 500 people have gathered in a small community have reached Spring Junction. People are lined up bumper to bumper on this narrow 2-lane road. About the cameras, the print and broadcast media are well representative. A happening is happening. What is going on? What is going on? March 26, 52 days after Gladys Ruth Rogers passed from this life, her son, with the aid of fellow evangelists, were pouring on the prayer power. I call Sister Rogers by her name, calling her to rise in the name of Jesus. Get up! The saga of Gladys Ruth Rogers and the effort to bring her back to life after almost 2 months' work. Tune in. You might enjoy it. Here are a few of the sources that were used in recording the story of Ella. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.